Welcome, everyone, to our deep dive into a topic that I think is close to many of our hearts, motivating young minds. And not just any young minds. We're talking about that 10 to 25 age range. You know, the years when they're really figuring out who they are and what they want to do with their lives. We've got 3 fascinating episodes from the Chinese podcast Wanwei Gang's Elite Day as our guide for this, all translated into English, of course.
And what's really exciting about these episodes is the sheer variety of perspectives they bring to the table. We're going to be exploring some unexpected connections, everything from autism to the power of storytelling, and how these seemingly unrelated things can actually play a huge role in motivation.
Okay, so let's dive right in. A problem I think most of us are familiar with is, well, motivating teenagers to learn. I mean, we've all tried the classic carrots and sticks approach. Good grades, extra privileges, bad grades, grounded.
Right. But the sources we're looking at today really challenge the effectiveness of those traditional reward and punishment systems, especially when you're dealing with something as complex and nuanced as learning.
Yeah, it's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. You can try, but it's never going to be a smooth process. Instead, these episodes point to the power of something called intrinsic motivation.
That's right. That internal drive to learn and grow simply for the joy of it.
So not because you're trying to avoid punishment or get some kind of external reward.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that natural curiosity, that innate desire to make sense of the world.
And I think one of the best examples from the sources that illustrates this was that study about teenagers and healthy food choices.
Oh, yes. The one where they were more likely to pick healthy options when it was framed as an act of rebellion against those big junk food companies.
Exactly. It's like suddenly eating a salad became this empowering statement. So much more effective than just telling them, eat your vegetables, they're good for you.
It speaks to that need for autonomy, you know? Like, even if the choice is being subtly influenced, there's still that feeling of being in control.
Totally. Now, here's where things get really interesting. One of the podcasts talked about these expeditionary learning schools.
Oh, I've heard of those.
Have you? They seem to take this whole idea of intrinsic motivation to a whole new level.
They do. They're all about getting students actively engaged in real-world projects.
Right. Things like designing anti-violence campaigns, interviewing veterans. Instead of just reading about these things in a textbook, they're actually out there experiencing them firsthand.
It makes learning relevant. You know, it gives it purpose and meaning beyond just grades.
Absolutely. And it made me think, how can we, even in our own interactions with young people, apply this principle of making learning relevant to their lives?
It's a great question. And, you know, it doesn't have to be anything super complicated. Think about how you can connect even the most seemingly boring subjects to their interests and passions.
Give me an example.
Okay, let's say you're trying to get a young person excited about history. Instead of just making them memorize dates and names, why not encourage them to research their family's genealogy?
Oh, I love that.
Or maybe explore the history of their favorite hobby. Suddenly, history isn't just some dusty old textbook. It's a personal journey of discovery.
That's such a good point. Okay, so we've talked about motivation. Now, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about something that's closely related. Belonging. And how crucial that sense of belonging is, especially for young people who feel different. The sources we're looking at really delve into the world of autism and offer some thought-provoking perspectives.
Yeah, one of the things they address head on is this misconception that autistic individuals are difficult to work with. But what these episodes highlight is that when given the right environment, their unique ways of thinking and interacting can be incredible assets.
It's about recognizing and valuing neurodiversity, right? Instead of trying to squeeze everyone into the same mold, we need to create spaces where everyone feels seen and valued for who they are.
Exactly. And one of the sources uses a fantastic example to illustrate this point. They talk about an astrophysics professor named Kevin Stassen. He's a big proponent of what he calls inclusive excellence.
I love that phrase. What did Stassen do?
Well, he had a really talented autistic programmer in his lab. But this programmer was facing some challenges. The noise and casual joking during meetings were overwhelming for him. Plus, he didn't have a computer powerful enough to run his complex code.
So how did Stassen address this?
He made some adjustments, banned jokes during meetings, bought a military-grade computer, and allowed the programmer to participate virtually when needed.
Wow, he really went above and beyond to create an inclusive environment.
He did. And what's fascinating is that these accommodations didn't just benefit the autistic individual. They actually improved the lab's overall communication and research clarity.
That's amazing. It really underscores the point that creating a more inclusive environment benefits everyone.
Precisely. And it raises an interesting question for all of us. Could we all benefit from clearer, more inclusive communication, even if we don't have autism?
That's something to think about for sure. Okay, so we've talked about motivation and belonging. Now, I want to tackle a challenge that's closely related to belonging, imposter syndrome.
Ah, yes, that feeling of self-doubt, that nagging voice that tells you you're not good enough, that you don't belong, that you're going to be found out as a fraud. It can be incredibly debilitating, especially for young people who are already navigating so many other challenges.
Absolutely. And it can become this vicious cycle. The sources talk about how low performance can lead to feelings of not belonging, which further hinders performance and can lead to withdrawal. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
One of the podcasts uses this fascinating analogy from Chinese mythology to describe this. They talk about how certain deities need to be awakened or reminded of their true identity after they're reincarnated. It's as if their potential is there, but something is blocking them from fully realizing it.
That's such a powerful image. It reminds me of those classic hero's journey stories where the protagonist has to overcome their self-doubt and embrace their true calling.
Exactly, and this is where the power of narrative comes in. One of the sources highlights the work of David Yeager. He's done some incredible research on using targeted stories to foster a sense of belonging and combat imposter syndrome.
So he's essentially saying that we can help young people rewrite those internal narratives, those stories they tell themselves about who they are and what they're capable of.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that he's found a specific 4-step narrative structure that can be really effective.
Oh, I'm all ears. Break it down for me.
Okay, so the first step is normalizing struggles. Showing young people that everyone faces challenges and setbacks. It's part of the human experience.
It's about making them feel less alone.
Right. The second step is emphasizing the possibility of change, instilling hope that things can and do get better, that they have the power to change their circumstance.
So that they're not stuck.
Exactly. The third step is providing concrete action steps. Give them a roadmap, specific strategies and techniques they can use to create positive change.
Make it practical.
And finally, the fourth step is illustrating a positive snowball effect.
What do you mean by that?
Showing them that even small actions can lead to bigger and bigger wins, building their confidence and motivation along the way.
So it's about showing them that progress is possible and that it builds on itself.
Precisely. And the sources actually give some really compelling real-life examples of this in action. They talk about Daniel Lapsley, a psychology professor who was inspired to pursue higher education after a chance encounter with a college student. And he, in turn, inspired David Yeager, the author of the book these podcasts are based on.
Wow, that's incredible. It really illustrates how these awakening moments can ripple outward, creating a chain reaction of positive impact.
It makes you think about the power we all have to make a difference in each other's lives. And it makes me wonder, what stories of resilience and transformation have inspired you? How can you share those stories to help a young person facing challenges? Actually, one of the sources describes this really interesting intervention, to tackle that fading effect we were just discussing.
Oh, this sounds promising. Especially if it's about helping young people, especially those facing more obstacles, actually make it through college.
So imagine this. It's a summer camp, but not your typical marshmallows and campfires kind of camp. We're talking physically and mentally challenging activities. Whitewater rafting, rock climbing, even navigating a ropes course.
Okay, that sounds more like my kind of camp. But how does this tie into college success?
That's the genius part. The idea is to push these students way outside their comfort zones, help them build resilience, that feeling of accomplishment that they can then carry into other tough areas of life, like those first few years of higher education.
So it's about building that grit everyone's always talking about.
Exactly. But there's a crucial twist here. It's not just about tossing them into these challenges and hoping for the best. What the researchers found was that daily reflection and discussion sessions were absolutely key for long-term impact.
I can see that. They're not just having these incredible experiences, they're actively processing them, connecting them back to their own values and goals.
Exactly. They're encouraged to think about how they overcame their fears, how they supported their teammates, and how those exact same skills can be applied to academic challenges, making those implicit lessons explicit, creating a conscious link between experience and mindset.
So, did it work? Spill the results.
The results were pretty impressive. For students who went through this program, the 4-year college completion rate went up by a significant 10 percentage points.
Wow, that's huge, especially for students who statistically might have struggled to finish their degrees. It really highlights the power of combining that hands-on learning with structured reflection time.
It does, and it makes you wonder, What if we applied this approach beyond just formal education? Could we use it to help young people navigate other tricky parts of life, like building healthy relationships, finding their purpose?
That's such an interesting thought. Okay, shifting gears a bit. I want to touch on something that came up a lot in these podcasts. The impact of human connection, especially mentors.
Oh, absolutely. The role mentors play in shaping young lives is immense.
Oh, I'm a huge believer in mentorship. It's had such a profound impact on my own life, both when I've been the mentor and the one being mentored. Sometimes all it takes is one conversation to spark a whole new direction or ignite a passion that might have otherwise just stayed dormant.
Absolutely. And one of the sources tells this great story about Daniel Lapsley. He went on to become a very well-respected psychology professor. But when he was only 12, a chance encounter with a college student at a gas station planted the seed for his whole academic journey.
Wait, seriously, a gas station? What happened?
The college student simply asked young Lapsley if he'd ever thought about going to college and recommended he check out Dante's Inferno. That's all it took.
Wow, talk about a life-changing fill-up. Sometimes it really is just a little nudge, a moment of recognition from someone we admire that opens up possibilities we hadn't even considered.
It's like that Chinese concept of dianhua, which means to awaken or enlighten. It suggests that our true potential is already there within us, but sometimes we need a mentor, a guide, to help us see it and tap into it.
I love that. It's such a powerful idea, and it makes me think of that quote by Marianne Williamson. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Often, we need someone else to reflect that power back to us, to help us believe in ourselves.
Exactly. Good mentors see our potential, even when we can't see it ourselves, and they challenge us to aim higher, to become more than we thought possible. They don't just spoon-feed us answers. They ask thought-provoking questions, offer guidance, and create space for us to explore our own ideas and discover our own paths.
One of the sources even compared dianhua to a spell, a brief intervention that can have a ripple effect for years to come. Kind of like those short interventions we discussed earlier, the ones that pack so much impact into just 20 minutes or even 5.
It's amazing to think that a single conversation, a well-placed question, a genuine word of encouragement can sometimes set a young person on a whole new trajectory that changes the entire course of their life.
It makes you realize how much power each of us holds, simply by how we choose to interact with the young people in our lives.
And this brings us back to that idea of high standards and high support that was woven throughout all these sources. It's not enough to just set the bar high. We need to provide the encouragement, the guidance, the genuine belief in their ability to reach that bar.
Like being a gardener, right? You plant the seeds, give them sunlight, water, nutrients. But sometimes, even with the best care, plants need a little extra support. A stake to keep them upright, a trellis to help them climb. Mentors provide that kind of support, that gentle guidance that helps young people truly thrive.
Beautifully said. And it reminds me of something Yuri Treisman said about his teaching. It's about helping them see themselves as capable of doing hard things. That's such a powerful message that goes way beyond just the classroom.
So true. It applies to everything. Relationships, chasing dreams, making a difference in the world.
And it's a message that we, as mentors, have the privilege of delivering, day in and day out. Through our words, our actions, our unwavering belief in the potential of the young people we're lucky enough to guide.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation so far. I feel like I'm walking away with a ton of valuable insights, not just for how we interact with young people, but for my own journey as well.
I completely agree. I hope our listener is feeling just as inspired and ready to make a difference in the lives of the young people they encounter. It's about sparking that intrinsic motivation, that inner fire that makes them eager to learn and grow. And it all starts with believing in them and showing them that they are capable of amazing things.
It's funny, we talk so much about motivating young people, but I think these sources have a lot to teach us grown-ups, too.
I was just thinking that these principles, intrinsic motivation, belonging, resilience, purpose, they're not just for kids, right? They're for everyone, no matter what stage of life you're in.
Exactly. And it takes me back to that idea of inclusive excellence we discussed earlier. It's not just about welcoming those who are different. It's about realizing that it's that diversity of thought and experience and perspective that actually makes us stronger, more innovative, more effective in everything we do.
Yeah, it's about moving away from that one-size-fits-all mentality.
And recognizing the unique contributions that each person brings to the table.
Exactly.
It's a powerful message for everyone.
For sure.
Whether you're leading a team at work, mentoring someone, or even just, navigating your own personal growth.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that growth and learning are lifelong journeys.
Yeah.
And we can all benefit from that mentor mindset,
High standards, high support.
not just for others, but for ourselves too.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
What would it look like to apply these principles beyond education to all areas where we interact with young people?
Our families.
Our communities.
Mm.
Our workplaces.
It's a challenge for sure.
It is.
But it's also an incredible opportunity.
It is. How can we create environments that foster intrinsic motivation, nurture that sense of belonging, empower young people to reach their full potential?
I think by embracing the insights we've discussed today, we can make a real difference.
I think so too. So, to everyone listening, I encourage you to take one small step this week. Apply what you've learned, share a story, offer encouragement, create a mini expedition, or just listen, really listen, with an open heart and a genuine belief in the power of young minds.
Because you never know when a simple conversation or a moment of encouragement might spark something truly amazing.
Until next time, keep diving deep.